Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. You won't want to miss the true, dark accounts I'm about to share. So sit tight and let's begin. It's July 15th, 2023. The heat of the summer was unbearable in Grayson City, a small town tucked away in the corners of the state, far from the usual chaos of city life. I never imagined I'd be writing this, but here I am, still struggling to comprehend everything that happened. I've always been a skeptic about ghosts, curses, and anything supernatural, but after he showed up again, I knew something was horribly wrong. I was sitting in my small apartment, a quiet place on the top floor of an old building. The creaking of the wooden floors was the only thing that kept me company as the clock ticked on. I had moved here just a month ago, hoping to leave everything behind, hoping to forget. The relationship with Adam had ended badly, a relationship I once thought was forever, but forever didn't last, did it? It was strange how quickly things had changed. One moment we were planning our future together, and the next we were torn apart. Adam was charming, smart, and everything I thought I needed. But he also had his darker side, something I hadn't seen until it was too late. He would get possessive, controlling, but at first, I dismissed it. I told myself, every relationship has its flaws. Every couple fights. But Adam's flaws turned into something worse. The controlling behavior was one thing, but his obsession with me, his need to keep me, crossed a line that I couldn't ignore. And so, I left. I packed my things and left him behind. The relief I felt at the time, it was huge. But soon after, my phone buzzed with his name. At first, it was simple text messages apologizing, begging me to come back. Then it was the phone calls. And then the mysterious messages that made no sense, but were strangely personal. I thought changing my number and moving to a new city would be enough. But I was wrong. A week ago, something happened. I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, gasping for air. The room was cold, too cold. It didn't make sense. It was the middle of summer. My breath was visible in the air, like I was standing outside in the winter. I didn't think much of it at first. It was probably the air conditioning, I told myself. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep again, but then I heard it. A sound faint at first, but unmistakable. A soft tapping on my window. Tap, tap, like fingernails, lightly scratching against the glass. I froze, my heart pounding. I had no idea what to think. I lay there in the darkness, staring at the window, trying to convince myself it was just a tree branch moving in the wind. But the tapping didn't stop. Tap, tap, tapped out with shaking hands. I reached for my phone. I checked the time, 2:42 a.m. My heart raced even faster. I slowly got out of bed, my legs like jelly. The apartment was eerily silent, and the tapping had stopped, but the air was still unnaturally cold. I crept toward the window, my feet barely making a sound. Slowly, I pulled the curtains aside, only to find nothing. There was nothing outside. No one in the parking lot, no shadows creeping in the night. I sighed in relief, telling myself it was just my imagination. But then I turned around to go back to bed, and I saw it. A small framed photo of me and Adam from years ago, sitting right there on my kitchen counter. I didn't remember putting it there. I knew I hadn't seen it in months, maybe even longer. The photo was just there, sitting on the counter, staring at me like it was waiting for me to notice. The blood drained from my face. I walked over to the photo, my hands trembling. It was a picture of Adam and me at a summer party, a memory I'd been trying so hard to forget. We looked happy in the picture, but I knew things had been anything but happy towards the end. It felt like a cruel reminder of the past I was trying to escape. I had thrown away all those photos, hadn't I? I stared at the photo for a long time. My mind raced. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe I had left it out without realizing. But deep down, I felt the unease in my stomach growing. And then my phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. The message read, "You can't escape me, Sarah." I froze. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. My fingers hovered over the screen, unable to move. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come out. I stared at the text, my mind going blank. I knew it. I knew he had found me. I had hoped, prayed, that leaving him behind would be enough, but now I realized ... It would never be enough. Adam wasn't going to let me go that easily. I tried to shake off the feeling that settled over me. I told myself it was just a prank, that maybe it was some sick joke, but deep down, I felt it in my bones. The way the text felt, it wasn't just a random message. It felt like a warning, and that's when I realized Adam wasn't done with me. It had been 3 days since the text message, and yet I still couldn't shake the feeling that Adam was out there. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, of course. I didn't want to sound crazy. Who would believe me? A grown woman, alone, in her apartment, thinking her ex-boyfriend was haunting her? It sounded insane, even to me. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It felt ... real. I tried to keep my mind occupied, busying myself with work and pushing the anxiety aside. But no matter what I did, it lingered. Every time I stepped into my apartment, I felt it like someone was watching me from the corner of the room. The shadows in my place started to feel thicker, heavier. At night I couldn't sleep, and every creak of the floorboards or shift in the wind would send my heart racing. I tried telling myself I was being paranoid, but deep inside, I knew something was wrong. One evening, I got home late from work. It was just past 10 p.m., and the streets of Grayson City were silent, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the empty street. I opened the door to my apartment and immediately felt the air was wrong. It was cold, again too cold. I could see my breath. The heat from the day had long passed, but this was different. I glanced around the living room, and for the first time in a while, I felt uneasy. Nothing was out of place, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was. As I walked through the apartment, the floorboards creaked under my feet, each sound magnified in the oppressive silence. The kitchen light flickered briefly, then went out completely, casting the room into darkness. I reached for the light switch, my fingers brushing the wall as I walked. But just as I flicked the switch, I saw something that made my heart stop. A figure. For a split second, I thought I saw Adam standing in the doorway to the bathroom. But when I blinked, the figure was gone. I stood there frozen, my breath shallow, staring into the dark hallway. The only sound in the room was the buzzing of the broken light above me. "Get a grip, Sarah," I whispered to myself, trying to convince my racing mind that it was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew I hadn't imagined it. The shadow, the feeling. He was here. I forced myself to move, checking the apartment from top to bottom, turning on every light I could find. But it was as if the house had become a silent prison, the shadows stretching further, wrapping around me. That's when I saw it, the picture again. The same photo, the one of me and Adam, was back on the counter. I had gotten rid of all of them. I distinctly remembered throwing them away when I left him. But there it was again, on the kitchen counter, sitting in the same place it had been 3 nights ago. I reached for it, my hands shaking as I picked it up. The photo felt oddly cold in my hands, almost like it was alive. But there was something more. The edges were frayed, and the glass was cracked. I could feel something in my chest tightening as I stared at it, the words in the back of my mind repeating, "You can't escape me." I slammed the photo down on the counter, but the unease remained. My phone buzzed again. I took a deep breath, not wanting to look, but the dread was too overwhelming. I grabbed it, eyes locked on the screen as I read the message. "I know you're scared. You should be." My heart pounded in my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The message didn't just feel like a warning. It felt like a promise. I stumbled back from the counter, nearly knocking over a glass that had been sitting there. I didn't know what to do. I thought I had left him behind, but he wasn't gone. In the corner of my eye, I saw something flicker in the mirror above. The sink. At first, I thought it was just the dim light playing tricks on me, but when I looked closer, I saw his reflection, Adam, standing right behind me. I whirled around, heart racing, but there was nothing there. I stood still, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The mirror was fine, but I could still feel him. I had to get out. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me. I couldn't stay there another minute. I didn't know where I was going, just somewhere far from that apartment, far from everything. My mind was spinning, the fear too overwhelming. I tried to focus on anything but the terror that gripped me, but it was impossible. It was as if the world around me was closing in, and I couldn't escape the constant presence of Adam, even though I didn't want to admit it. I spent hours walking around the city, too afraid to go back. I thought about calling someone, but I knew they wouldn't understand. How could they? No one could understand this. I thought about going to the police, but what would I say? That my ex-boyfriend was haunting me? No, I couldn't tell anyone. I had to figure this out on my own. When I finally returned to the apartment, it was just before sunrise. The door was still locked, but the moment I stepped inside, it felt like something had changed. It was no longer the cold that bothered me, but the heavy silence. The apartment felt empty, but not in the way it did before. It was more like there was something or someone waiting for me. I stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind me. The apartment looked just like I left it, but I felt the weight of the air press down on me. My eyes moved across the room, scanning every shadow, every corner. But there was no sign of him. Yet. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was there, watching me, waiting for me to turn around. Then I heard it. Soft tapping at the window. Tap. 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 I didn't need to look to know who it was. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The tapping continued. Slow and deliberate tap, tap, tap. It felt like it was coming from every direction, echoing in my ears. But I couldn't bring myself to turn and look at the window. I don't know why I waited so long. Maybe hoping it would stop, that it wasn't really happening. Maybe I was waiting for some kind of sign that told me this wasn't real. But then I heard it again, even louder this time, a sharp bang against the glass. That's when I moved. I didn't think. I just ran. I darted down the hallway and straight to the window. The light from the street below cast long, eerie shadows across my living room. But as I pulled the curtains aside, I saw nothing. Nothing at all. The parking lot was empty. The street was silent. There was no one, no sign of movement, no footsteps. In the snow, nothing that could explain the sound I had heard just moments ago. I let out a shaky breath, feeling the adrenaline pumping through my veins. It had to be my imagination, or maybe some neighbor messing around. I tried to convince myself of that, but the gnawing feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. I went back to the kitchen and sat down at the table, feeling utterly defeated. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, half hoping to get a message from a friend, or maybe even Emily, someone to distract me. But when I unlocked the screen, there it was. Another message from the blocked number. You think you can outrun me? You can't. I'm inside your head now. My fingers went numb, and the phone slipped from my hands, clattering against the table. My mind spun with panic. I didn't understand how this was happening. How was he getting inside my head? How could he even know what I was thinking? Suddenly, the sound of footsteps behind me made my blood run cold. The floorboards creaked slow, deliberate steps, like someone was walking through my apartment, coming closer, getting nearer. My body froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. I glanced around the room, expecting to see a shadow or a figure emerge from the darkness. But nothing. I looked toward the door. No one. Nothing. Then the tapping on the window began. Again. Tap. Tap, tap, tap. I turned, and this time my legs moved on their own. My feet carried me to the window, my body on autopilot. When I looked outside, I saw nothing. Just the empty street, the streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. Then, in the reflection of the glass, I saw him, not outside. But behind me, Adam, his face wasn't like I remembered. It was twisted, contorted, his eyes wide and empty, his skin pale and ashen. The reflection in the window was like a shadow of him, a ghostly version of the man I once loved, but now he was something else. Something dark. I screamed and spun around, but the room was still empty. I was alone. Alone. My heart pounded in my chest as I stumbled backward. The room seemed to spin. I was dizzy, disoriented. Was I losing my mind? I didn't know what was real anymore. The air grew heavier, colder, as if the room itself was closing in on me. I could hear his voice, low and muffled, like it was coming from inside my own head. "I'm not gone, Sarah. You'll never be free of me." I clutched my head, my hands shaking. The sound, the voice, it was inescapable. I needed to leave. I needed to get out. But I didn't know where to go. I couldn't escape him. The phone buzzed again. I didn't even want to look. But somehow my hand reached for it, trembling. When I unlocked the screen, there was no text. No message, just a video. It was an old video of us, taken at a summer party. We were laughing, smiling, happy, back when everything seemed perfect. But the video started to glitch. The image flickered, the sound warped, and suddenly, Adam's face twisted. It stretched unnaturally, his smile widening beyond what was humanly possible. His eyes, they were dark, empty voids, like there was no soul left inside him. The distorted version of his voice echoed through the phone. "We'll be together forever. Sarah." The video ended abruptly, the screen turning black. I dropped the phone, my body trembling as the room seemed to close in around me. I backed away, but there was no escaping the suffocating feeling that Adam was still here, somehow. His presence clung to every corner of the room, every shadow, every breath I took. I couldn't do this anymore. I needed help, but who could I turn to? Emily? My friends? No one would believe me. They would think I was crazy. No one understood what was happening to me. I grabbed my coat, desperate to leave, to get some air, to clear my head. But as I stepped toward the door, my hand on the doorknob, something stopped me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I slowly turned, and the sight that met me made my stomach drop. There, standing in the doorway, was Adam. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. There, in the doorway, standing in the shadows, was Adam. But it wasn't him. It couldn't have been. This version of Adam looked wrong. His eyes were wide, but they weren't his eyes. They were black holes, empty and soulless, like the light inside him had long been snuffed out. His skin was sickly pale, like it had been drained of color, stretched too tight over his bones. For a moment, I stood frozen, staring at him in disbelief, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. Was this a hallucination? Was I losing my mind? Then, his lips twitched into a smile. But it wasn't a smile I recognized. It was a twisted grin, something cold and malicious that made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. "You didn't think you could get away from me, did you, Sarah?" His voice was different, deeper, colder. It didn't sound like the Adam I once knew. It sounded like something else, something other. I stumbled back, my legs giving way beneath me. I hit the wall hard, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My heart was pounding so fast I could barely think. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. He took a step forward, his movements slow and deliberate. Each step he took made the air feel heavier, like it was pressing down on me. The room grew colder, and I felt the familiar presence of the shadows closing in. "You can't run from me, Sarah," he repeated, his voice echoing in my ears. His eyes never left mine, and I felt my body go rigid with fear. He was inside my head. I could feel it, that dark presence invading my thoughts like a parasite, wrapping around my mind. I tried to move, to escape, but my feet wouldn't budge. I couldn't look away from him. He was like a force pulling me in, compelling me to stay. "You think you're free," he continued, his voice like ice. "You think you can escape me, but I'll always be here. Inside you, watching, waiting." I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to wake up from this nightmare. This couldn't be real. It wasn't real. When I opened my eyes, Adam was closer, too close. His face was inches from mine, the smell of something foul clinging to him, like rotting flesh. His smile widened, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too jagged. "You're mine, Sarah, always." I couldn't breathe. I was suffocating. Suddenly, without thinking, I lunged for the door. My hands were shaking so badly I almost missed the doorknob. But I yanked the door open and stumbled into the hallway, desperate to get away. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was that I had to get out, had to put distance between me and him, because I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on to my sanity. I ran down the stairs, barely able to see through the tears clouding my vision. I had to get away. I had to find somewhere safe, but I couldn't think straight. I just kept running, my heart pounding in my ears. The sound of my footsteps echoed in the stairwell, the only noise I could focus on. I didn't stop running until I reached the street outside. The city was dark, eerily quiet, and the chill in the air bit at my skin. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I felt my legs start to give out beneath me. But I couldn't stop, not yet. Not while he was still out there. I turned a corner, moving blindly down an unfamiliar street, my eyes darting around, looking for something, anything to ground me, to tell me this was just a bad dream. But nothing was familiar. The streetlights were dim, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out in front of me like claws reaching for me. I couldn't escape him. He was always there, always watching, always waiting. I could feel his presence, like a heavy weight pressing down on me. I collapsed onto a bench, gasping for air. My mind was racing, and my body felt like it was on the verge of shutting down. My hands were shaking violently, and I couldn't stop it. What do I do? The thought echoed in my mind. I tried to calm myself, to think rationally, but nothing made sense. I couldn't trust my own mind anymore. I couldn't trust anything. Then out of nowhere, the message popped up on my phone. Blocked number. "You can't outrun me, Sarah. I'm always with you. Forever." I closed my eyes, gripping the bench so tightly my knuckles went white. I tried to stop the tears, but they came anyway, hot and fast, blurring my vision. I had to face it. He wasn't just my ex. He wasn't a normal person. This was something else, something far darker. And I was trapped in this nightmare. I had to survive. Somehow. I didn't know how. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to give up. Next few days blurred together, each one stretching into the next like I was caught in a loop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Adam's face, those dark, empty eyes, his twisted grin. Every corner I turned felt like I was being followed, and every shadow seemed to whisper his name. My apartment, which used to be my safe haven, felt like a prison, each room suffocating me with its silence. I couldn't escape him. No matter where I went, I felt his presence, hovering just behind me, always there. It was as if he had left some invisible mark on me, a darkness that clung to me, pressing in from all sides. I tried everything to make it stop. I called my friends, but when I told them what was happening, they thought I was crazy. They thought I was being dramatic. "You're just stressed, Sarah," they'd say. You need to get some sleep. But they didn't get it. They didn't feel what I felt. They didn't hear the whispers in the night, so I stopped talking to them. I couldn't bring myself to explain it anymore. They wouldn't believe me. I started taking late night walks, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. It didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. I couldn't shake the feeling that Adam was always just a step behind me, lurking in the shadows, watching me, waiting for me to break. One night I was walking through a part of the city I didn't recognize. The streets were empty, the buildings looming tall and silent around me. It was one of those nights where the fog rolled in heavy, thick, and it made everything look unreal, like I was walking through a dream. The cold bit at my skin, but I couldn't bring myself to care. My mind was too far gone, lost in a haze of fear and exhaustion. I rounded a corner, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The air felt still, too still. And then, I saw it. At the end of the street, standing beneath a flickering street lamp, was a figure. I knew instantly it was him, the shapeless silhouette. The faint outline of a person standing motionless, their back to me. I could feel my blood turn to ice. I didn't want to approach, but I couldn't look away. I knew this wasn't real. This couldn't be real. It was just my mind playing tricks on me. But even as I tried to convince myself, my legs moved forward. Slowly, cautiously, my heart thundering in my chest. When I was about halfway down the street, the figure turned. I stopped dead in my tracks. It was Adam, but his face, oh God, his face. It wasn't him anymore. It was that same twisted thing I saw in the mirror, the one from the photo. His features were warped, his mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. His eyes were black, hollow, like they were staring straight through me. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His very presence was enough to freeze me in place. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was paralyzed, caught in the grip of pure terror. And then, with that same slow, deliberate pace, he began to walk toward me. His movements were unnaturally smooth, like he was gliding over the pavement. I stumbled backward, my legs shaking, my breath shallow. I had to get away. I had to escape. But there was nowhere to go. The street was empty, the fog too thick to see more than a few feet in front of me. As he got closer, his voice cold and detached whispered through the fog. I told you, Sarah, you can't escape me. It felt like a slap to the face. His voice didn't sound like the Adam I remembered. It was hollow, empty, like there was nothing human left inside him. Suddenly, I snapped out of my stupor. My legs were no longer frozen in place. I turned, panic flooding my body, and I ran. I didn't look back, I just ran. I could feel him behind me, every step echoing in my mind. That coldness creeping up my spine, urging me to go faster, to run farther. I couldn't hear his footsteps, but I knew he was there. I could feel it in my bones, in the very air around me. My breath was ragged, and my vision blurred from the tears stinging my eyes, but I couldn't stop. I didn't care where I was going. I didn't care about anything, except getting away from him. When I turned the corner, I crashed into a streetlight, almost knocking myself out. But I didn't stop. I scrambled to my feet and kept running, the cold night air stinging my face. I heard a faint sound behind me, something distant, but I couldn't stop long enough to check. I ran until I found a small diner, a place still open at this hour. I rushed inside, gasping for breath, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. The waitress behind the counter looked up, startled. I couldn't even speak. I just collapsed into a seat, shaking uncontrollably. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the floor, trying to calm my breathing. The waitress must have thought I was crazy. She didn't say anything, just handed me a glass of water, and I drank it down like it was my last. My mind was a mess. I couldn't make sense of what was happening. But one thing was clear. I couldn't run anymore. Adam wasn't just a person. He was something else. Something I couldn't understand. Something that had followed me into the deepest parts of my mind. And now I realized there was only one way out. I sat there in the diner for what felt like hours, my mind swirling with confusion and fear. Every noise, every shadow seemed to carry a part of him with it. The sound of a car passing outside made my heart skip a beat. The chime of the doorbell, ringing as customers came and went, sent a spike of terror through my chest. But still, no sign of him. No Adam. I kept my eyes trained on the door, half expecting him to walk in, his twisted grin plastered on his face, like he was following me, just waiting for the right moment to show himself again. The waitress kept glancing over at me, probably thinking I was losing my mind. I probably was, but I couldn't think straight. I was shaking too badly to do anything but sit there, lost in a sea of terror and exhaustion. Eventually, the diner started to empty out. The last few stragglers left, and the waitress went to clean up. I felt the weight of the room settle on me, and I knew I couldn't stay here forever. I couldn't hide. I couldn't run. I stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me, my stomach twisted with dread. I didn't know what to do anymore, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to my apartment. It wasn't safe. It was never safe. The fog outside had thickened, wrapping the city in a suffocating blanket of white. I stepped out onto the street, the cold air biting at my skin, the smell of wet asphalt mixing with the sharp tang of the fog. I looked up and down the road, feeling utterly alone in the world. There was no one but me in the shadows. That seemed to grow longer with every passing second. I couldn't stay out here forever, though. I needed a plan. I needed answers. I needed to fight back. As I walked, the fog seemed to warp the world around me, distorting everything into a nightmarish landscape. The streetlights looked warped, like they were bending and twisting under the weight of something unseen. I heard something in the distance, a faint, echoing laugh, but I couldn't tell if it was real or if my mind was playing tricks on me. I paused, glancing around. The street was completely empty. But then, there it was again, the soft, slow tap, tap, tap. It was coming from behind me. I spun around, my heart in my throat, but there was nothing there. No one. Just the fog, thick and suffocating, wrapping around the buildings, making it hard to see more than a few feet in front of me. I kept walking, faster this time, but the feeling of being watched never left. It was as if he was always just behind me, his presence a weight pressing on my back, holding me in place. I could hear him now, whispering in the back of my mind, his words a constant hum. "You can't outrun me, Sarah." I clutched my head, trying to block out his voice, but it didn't. "Help!" It just echoed louder. The sound of his laugh filled my ears, and I could feel his presence in every breath I took. I couldn't let him win. I had to face him. I had to stop running. But how? How could I stop something like him? I didn't know what he was. I didn't know if he was even human anymore. But one thing was clear. He was connected to me in a way I couldn't explain. He was inside me, inside my head, inside my thoughts. And as much as I tried to fight it, I was starting to feel it. The darkness. It was growing inside of me, creeping into my thoughts, wrapping around my heart. I could feel it, tugging at me, urging me to give up, to accept it, to stop running, but I wouldn't. I couldn't. I wasn't going to let him win. I kept walking, my thoughts jumbled, my body aching from the strain. I couldn't stop. I couldn't give up. And then, just as I thought I couldn't take any more, I saw something, a flicker in the fog, a figure. I stopped dead in my tracks. It was him, Adam, or what was left of him. He was standing in front of me just a few feet away, his face twisted, his eyes hollow, and his smile stretched impossibly wide. I should have been scared. I was scared, but something else was rising inside of me too. Anger. Anger that he thought he could break me. Anger that he thought he could turn me into something like him. I stepped forward, my fists clenched at my sides. I'm not afraid of you, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I'm not going to let you win. His smile only widened and he stepped closer. You already have, Sarah, he whispered, his voice cold and cruel. You already have. I felt something inside me snap. I wasn't going to let this end like this. Suddenly, I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I grabbed the nearest object I could find, a metal rod lying discarded on the ground, and swung it at him with all the strength I could muster. He dodged out, of course. He dodged, but I didn't stop. I kept swinging, my movements fueled by something wild, something desperate. I wasn't going to let him control me anymore. I wasn't going to let him take my life from me. The rod hit something, a sharp crack that echoed through the empty street. Adam staggered back, a pained grunt leaving his mouth. But even as I struck him again, I knew this wasn't enough. He wasn't just a man. He was something other. Something I couldn't fight with sheer force. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I was breathing heavily, my muscles burning from the adrenaline, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Every part of my body screamed for me to keep going, to break whatever hold he had on me. My thoughts were a blur, fear and anger battling for control, the terror of what Adam had become clawing at me from the inside. But one thing remained crystal clear: I needed to survive. I needed to win. Adam was still staggering back, but his twisted smile never wavered. It was as though nothing could faze him, like no matter how much I hit him, he would just keep coming back. But that wasn't going to stop me. I swung the rod again. But this time, as my arm swung forward, the air felt colder than before. The shadows around us seemed to grow deeper, as if they were stretching and pulling toward us, reaching out to swallow us whole. The streetlights flickered, their glow dimming and then flaring back to life as though they too were fighting to stay illuminated in the face of something much darker. You can't fight what you can't see, Sarah. Adam's voice echoed in my mind. A deep, mocking whisper. He wasn't even looking at me now. His gaze was fixed on the shadows surrounding us, as if he knew something I didn't. And in that moment, I realized the truth. He wasn't just a ghost from my past. He wasn't just a man who had twisted and warped into something dark. He was something that had infected my very soul, latched onto me in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. I took a step back, trying to shake the fear from my limbs. My eyes darted around. The fog had thickened even more, completely blurring everything beyond a few feet. It felt like we were the only two living things left in the world, trapped in a nightmare with no escape. His grin stretched even wider, impossibly wide. You think you're stronger than me, Sarah? His voice was almost laughing at me now. You think you can outrun me? You think you can beat me? I didn't answer. Instead, I took a deep breath and turned away, running again. Footsteps behind me were faint, but I knew he was still there. I could feel him, like a storm brewing in the distance, like a weight pressing on my chest, suffocating me with the knowledge that no matter how fast I ran, he'd always be there, waiting, watching, but I didn't stop. I didn't give in. I ran down the narrow street, my mind racing for any kind of escape. But the city had become a maze of streets that led nowhere, alleys that went in circles, and shadows that seemed to move and shift as though they had lives of their own. The fog made it hard to see, harder to breathe, and harder still to think clearly. I turned down an alley I hadn't noticed before, dark, quiet, and empty. I could feel the sensation of being watched intensifying. Then, I stopped. I knew I couldn't keep running forever. Eventually, I'd have to face him. I turned to face the alley behind me. It was too quiet now, eerily so. My breath was ragged, my chest aching with every inhale. But all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat thumping. In my ears, that's when I saw it. A figure, not Adam. No, something different. It was another man, tall, gaunt, with a shadowy silhouette that seemed to distort the light around him. His face was hidden in the darkness, but I could feel his presence. the same kind of darkness that clung to Adam. The man stepped forward, and I froze. He didn't speak, didn't make a sound, but the air around us shifted like it had grown heavier, denser. My legs felt like they were glued to the ground, unable to move, unable to run. A new kind of fear gripped me, something deeper, darker than what Adam had ever made me feel. The man's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, cold, piercing. And for the first time since this nightmare had started, I felt something I hadn't before, a sense of absolute hopelessness. I wasn't alone. There was something worse than Adam out here. The man raised a hand, a slow, deliberate movement, and his fingers twitched. I saw something flicker in his grip, a faint, glowing symbol, like an ancient rune carved into the air itself. The shadows seemed to respond, twisting and curling around his fingers like smoke. My heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't breathe. "You don't understand," the man said, his voice low and rasping. "You never did." Suddenly the ground beneath me felt unstable. The shadows around me seemed to come alive, swirling and pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. I staggered backward, but the shadows kept pressing in, like they were reaching for me, pulling me toward him. "It's too late for you, Sarah." I felt the ground beneath my feet give way, and I stumbled, almost losing my balance. The man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. He wasn't Adam, but he was part of whatever. Force had taken over him, and that meant one thing: Adam wasn't just a random nightmare. He was a piece of something far bigger than I had ever imagined. A piece of something ancient, dark, and terrifying. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about surviving Adam anymore. It was about surviving a force that had been lurking in the shadows all along, waiting to claim me. And now it was here. I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned, the weight of terror pressing down on me like a physical thing. The man's eyes burned into mine, cold and empty, and I realized with a sickening twist in my gut that I was facing something far beyond human. Understanding. The shadows wrapped tighter around me, curling against my skin like fingers trying to drag me into the earth. I tried to pull away, to escape, but my legs wouldn't move. It felt like the very air had turned to stone, heavy and suffocating. The figure in front of me stepped closer, and his low, rasping voice slithered through the fog. "You thought you could escape, Sarah." My throat tightened. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. My body was frozen, caught in his web of darkness. I had made a mistake. A mistake thinking that Adam was just a man, a failed relationship. That he was the monster I needed to escape. No, Adam was only a link in a much larger chain. And now that chain had pulled me in. I couldn't see beyond the figure's hollow, glowing eyes. But as I stared at him, something in me shifted. Knowing, a gut-wrenching realization that I was no longer a person in control of her own fate. I wasn't a victim of Adam anymore. I was a victim of something older, darker, and infinitely more dangerous than anything I'd ever faced. I blinked, and the world seemed to warp. The street around me, the fog, the shadows, they all distorted, like I was trapped in some sick hallucination. I wanted to scream, but the sound was stuck in my chest. I felt a growing, aching fear, as if I was about to vanish into this darkness and never be seen again. The figure stepped forward again, and the shadows tightened their grip. His voice was harder, colder. "Adam was only a vessel," he whispered. "He was the doorway." A cold, sick feeling spread through me. A vessel. That's what Adam had been. A vessel for something far worse than a human. I tried to jerk back, but it was no use. The shadows wouldn't let me go. The figure's hand shot out, grabbing me by the wrist with an unnatural strength. His grip was like ice. I couldn't break free. I couldn't breathe. His face was still hidden in the dark, but I could feel his eyes, feel them burning into me as he spoke again. "You've been marked, Sarah." His voice was soft now, almost like he was pitying me. "Marked since the moment you let him in." I didn't understand. What did he mean? I had never wanted to let Adam in. I had been broken, yes, but I hadn't willingly invited this nightmare. And yet, the truth slowly began to seep in. I wasn't just running from Adam. I wasn't just trying to escape a man who'd become a monster. I had already been chosen. The fog around me thickened, wrapping around my chest like an invisible hand, squeezing the air from my lungs. The figure's grip on my wrist tightened, dragging me toward him. I tried to pull away, but it felt like the earth beneath me was shifting, warping, as if it was a live dot, and then, in that sick, surreal moment, I saw something else. Something even worse than what was standing in front of me. A face, not Adam's. Not the figure's, but my own. The face staring back at me from the shadows was distorted, twisted in a way that felt like a mirror cracking. It was me, but not me. My eyes were hollow, empty, black. The mouth stretched into that same twisted grin that had haunted me from the very beginning. It was the darkness that had slowly crept into my soul. The same blackness that had taken over. Adam, and I knew then. It wasn't just Adam who had been corrupted. It was me. I had become him, become part of this thing. The figure, the darkness, it had already started its work. I could feel it now crawling beneath my skin. I gasped, trying to tear myself away from the mirror image. My pulse thundered in my ears. This was it. This was the end dot, but then something happened. A spark dot, just the faintest spark of willpower. I pulled my wrist free from the figure's icy grip, stumbling backward. The fog shifted, clearing for a brief moment, and I saw the world with a sharp clarity. The city, the streets I had walked through, the alley I stumbled into, it all felt so wrong. So twisted, like I was trapped in a dream where the rules didn't apply. The figure in front of me didn't move. He just stood there, watching me with those glowing eyes, his presence weighing down on me, trying to drag me back into the darkness. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I wasn't just going to let this thing swallow me whole. In that moment, I fought back. I didn't know how. I didn't have any clear plan. But I rallied every ounce of strength I had left. I thought of everything that had led me here, the fear, the loneliness, the pain, but also the small flickering light of hope that had always been there. The memories of who I was before this nightmare began. The girl who wasn't afraid, that girl was still inside me. She was the key to breaking free. I opened my mouth and screamed. I didn't scream out of fear. I screamed out of rage. Rage that this thing had taken everything from me. Rage that it thought it could take my soul. The figure's eyes flickered. A split-second hesitation. And in that split second, I ran. I ran with everything I had, my feet pounding against the ground, the shadows at my back. I didn't care where I was going anymore. I didn't care about anything except getting away. The world around me blurred as I sprinted through the fog, through the streets, into the unknown. I couldn't hear the figure anymore. I didn't know if he was still behind me or if he had given up. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. I kept running, faster than I ever thought possible. My legs burned with exhaustion, but there was no time to stop, no time to think. My mind raced with panic, but I forced myself to push it down. I couldn't let fear control me. Not anymore. The fog seemed endless, wrapping around me like an impenetrable wall. The sounds of my footsteps echoed in the empty streets, but there was something else now whispering. A faint, soft sound that seemed to follow me, curling around the corners of my mind, urging me to stop, to turn back. But I couldn't. I couldn't go back. As I ran, the fog began to thin in some areas, revealing glimpses of the city empty. Streets, abandoned cars, dimly lit windows, all looking like something out of a twisted dream. There was no one else, no one to help. I was alone, completely alone. The air grew colder, and I could feel it settling in my bones. The silence was suffocating, as if the entire world had been swallowed by this unnatural stillness. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see Adam or the figure from the alley standing right behind me. his eyes glowing in the dark. But there was nothing. Just the swirling fog, the empty streets, and the oppressive quiet. Maybe I had escaped. I dared to hope, just for a moment. I kept running, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the sound of my pulse thumping in my ears. Then up ahead, I saw something. A shape, a figure standing in the middle of the street, just past a broken streetlight. I stopped dead in my tracks. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. Not again. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It was just there. I couldn't make out any details, but the presence felt familiar. It was as if I already knew who or what it was. A chill ran down my spine. No, not again. But I couldn't turn back now. I had no choice. I had to face whatever this was. As I took a cautious step forward, I realized it wasn't just one figure. It was several, standing motionless in the fog, scattered across the street. Their faces were obscured, but their presence was undeniable. They were like shadows, dark and twisted, their outlines shifting as if they weren't entirely real. My heart thudded in my chest. There was something wrong with them. Something off. I stepped back, my feet stumbling over the uneven pavement. They didn't move, but I could feel their eyes on me, cold, unblinking. I tried to speak, but my voice was lost in the thick air. Were they real? Or had I finally gone insane? I tried to steady my breath. I couldn't lose my mind now. I couldn't let this thing break me. But the presence, the weight of their gaze, was suffocating. I had to know. I had to face whatever this was, whatever it wanted. I took another step forward, and that's when I saw it. A faint glow. It wasn't from the streetlights. It was coming from one of the figures, or more specifically, from behind them. A soft, eerie light, flickering like a candle in the wind. Something about it seemed wrong, familiar. I couldn't explain why, but I felt drawn to it. My feet moved of their own accord, carrying me toward the glow. The figures didn't move, didn't react. It was as if they were statues, waiting for something. As I reached the light, it grew brighter. But still, I couldn't see what was casting it. I reached out, almost without thinking, and a hand grabbed my arm. I froze, my heart nearly stopping in my chest. The grip was cold, too cold, and as I turned, I saw the last face I ever wanted to see. Adam. But not the Adam I once knew. His face was gaunt, his skin pale, his eyes hollow, his smile twisted into something grotesque. He looked like a puppet, his movements jerky and unnatural. His fingers dug into my arm like claws, and I could feel something icy crawl up my skin. He pulled me closer, his breath cold against my ear. "It's not over yet, Sarah." His voice was a rasping whisper, like the sound of nails on a chalkboard. "You can't escape. You never will." I tried to pull away, but his grip only tightened. The shadowy figures around us began to shift, their bodies moving in unsettling ways, like marionettes being controlled by unseen strings. They weren't human anymore. Not even close. The light behind them flickered again, and I could see it now. A door. A door I hadn't noticed before, standing alone in the middle of the street, surrounded by darkness. I tried to break free, but the more I struggled, the more I felt the darkness press in, wrapping around me, suffocating me. The air was thick, almost liquid, like it was closing in on me from all sides. The figures were closing in now, their eyes glowing, their mouths stretched wide in silent screams. And then, without warning, Adam yanked me toward the door. I tried to fight back, but it felt like the world itself was pulling me in. I stumbled. Through the door, a wave of cold air rushing past me, and I was swallowed by the dark. I fell through the door, but it didn't feel like I was falling at all. Instead, I was floating like my body was weightless, detached from the ground, suspended. In this overwhelming blackness, I couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything, but I could feel it. The presence. It was suffocating, wrapping around me like a cloak. Every inch of my skin tingled with an unnatural cold. a cold that dug into my bones. The darkness wasn't like the fog I had run through earlier. It wasn't simply a lack of light, it was alive, pulsating, breathing. A force that seemed to be feeding off me, draining everything I had left. I tried to scream, but no sound came. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't obey. It was like the very air had trapped me, holding me still, keeping me from escaping. In the distance I saw it, a faint glimmer of light, far, far away. At first, I thought it was a trick of my mind, some last hope clinging to my sanity. But as I focused on it, I realized it was real. It flickered like the light of a candle in a storm. The glow was soft but piercing, almost familiar. Without thinking, my body moved toward it, as if it was the only thing that could save me from this suffocating void. The darkness around me seemed to push back as I moved, twisting and swirling, like a storm trying to drag me back into its cold grip. But the light called to me, and the more I moved toward it, the clearer it became. It wasn't just any light. It was hope. I reached it, or at least I thought I had. But when I opened my eyes, it wasn't a door anymore. It was a mirror. A large, ornate mirror, its silver frame cracked and aged with time. The glass was dark, reflecting nothing but the void I had just come from. I reached out hesitantly, my fingers brushing against the cold surface. The reflection flickered, and for a split second, I saw something. Someone. It was me. But not me. The figure in the mirror had my face, but it was twisted. It was as if the reflection was showing the darkest, most broken version of myself: hollow eyes, cracked skin, a mouth stretched wide in an agonized scream. I jerked my hand away, but the mirror didn't stop. The image inside shifted, becoming more distorted, more horrific, and suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a mirror. It was a window. A window into the darkness I had been running from. And that face? It was the face of the thing I had become. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about Adam anymore. It was me. I was the one who had been consumed by the darkness. I had let it in. I had been marked. The reflection began to laugh. It wasn't my voice, but I could hear it clearly, feel it vibrating through my chest. You never understood, did you, Sarah? The figure in the mirror spoke, its lips curling into a smile that wasn't mine. You were always part of this. I stumbled back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. No, this couldn't be happening. I couldn't be this broken, this lost. But the figure didn't stop. It reached out from the mirror, its hand stretching toward me, like it was trying to pull me in. I felt its cold fingers wrap around my wrist, dragging me closer, the icy touch sinking into my skin. I screamed, this time, a real scream. A scream of pure fear, as I felt the darkness swallowing me whole. But then, something unexpected happened. A flash of light. A brilliant, blinding light. I gasped, blinking, as the mirror shattered before my eyes. The sound was deafening, the glass exploding into shards, scattering in every direction. The light was piercing, cutting through the darkness like a sword. I felt it then. The grip on my wrist loosened, the suffocating weight of the shadows lifting. The cold was gone. The air was clear. I looked around, disoriented, trying to make sense of what was happening. And then I saw it. The door, standing there in the middle of the void. It was no longer a door that led to another nightmare. This was a real door. A door that had been waiting for me. Without thinking, I ran toward it. The darkness tried to chase me, to pull me back into its cold embrace, but the light held firm, keeping it at bay. I reached the door, threw it open, and stepped through. The door slammed shut behind me, and suddenly, I was back in the real world. The city, the same streets I had been running through earlier, but everything was different now. It was like stepping into a twisted version of reality. The fog was still there, swirling in the distance, but it didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt empty, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something. I stood there for a moment, my body trembling, unsure if I could trust what I was seeing. My heart raced in my chest as I tried to make sense of everything that had just happened. The mirror, the door, the darkness. The figure's dot, was it real? Was I still stuck in that twisted world, or had I finally escaped? I looked around, desperate for a sign, anything to prove that I wasn't still trapped in some nightmare. But the streets were empty, too empty. There was no sign of anyone, no sounds, just the eerie silence pressing down on me. I stepped forward, my footsteps echoing in. The stillness, the familiar buildings, the streetlights, even the distant hum of the city felt alien now, like I was walking through a ghost town. It felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. I didn't know how long I'd been in that place, how long I had been running, but it felt like days, maybe longer. The weight of the terror, the cold, the shadows, they lingered in the back of my mind, just waiting to strike again. I stumbled forward, my vision blurring. The exhaustion hit me hard. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. The terror, the panic, the constant running, it had taken everything from me. My body felt heavy, as though I was walking through quicksand. But still, I pushed forward. There was no choice now. I had to keep moving. I had to survive. As I walked, I began to notice something strange. The people, if they could even be called that, who walked past me seemed disconnected. Their eyes were vacant, their movements stiff, like they were walking through a dream. I tried to call out to one, to ask if they could help, but my voice faltered, as if it didn't belong in this world. None of them looked at me. Not even a glance. It wasn't until I turned a corner that I saw him again. Adam. But this wasn't the Adam I had known. This wasn't the man I had loved. This was something worse, something darker. His eyes were glowing, his body disfigured in ways that didn't make sense. His grin was twisted, his teeth sharp and jagged like a predator's. I froze, my body locking up with fear. He stared at me for a moment, and then, without a word, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. It wasn't just a physical disappearance. It was like he was swallowed by the world itself, vanishing into the air. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I turned back and looked down the street. The figures, the shadows, they were there again, watching me. Their faces were just out of view, flickering in and out of focus. They didn't move, but I could feel them. I could feel their eyes on me, watching, waiting. I had no choice but to run again. This time, there was no hesitation. I didn't care where I was going. I just had to keep moving, to put as much distance between myself and the shadows as possible. I couldn't stop, couldn't slow down. The more I ran, the more the city began to warp. Buildings twisted and groaned, streets twisted into themselves like knots in a rope, and the sky grew darker, filled with swirling clouds. The further I went, the more the city began to crumble, falling apart in slow, agonizing seconds. I saw flashes, brief glimpses of people in the windows, people who were trying to escape, people who were trapped just like me. But they didn't scream, they just stared, vacant, hollow. Then I heard it. A whisper. Soft, barely audible, like a breath on the back of my neck. It's not over. The voice was familiar. Adam's voice. It echoed in my mind, cold and dark. You can't escape. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest. My body felt like it was about to collapse. I couldn't keep running. The darkness, the shadows, they were closing in. The fear was like a heavy weight on my chest, suffocating me. But then, something happened. The ground beneath me shifted. The pavement cracked, and the shadows that had been stalking me suddenly stopped. They began to retreat, backing away into the darkness like they were afraid of something. I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't about to question it. I sprinted forward, pushing myself faster than I ever thought possible. The shadows weren't chasing me now. For the first time, I felt like I had some kind of advantage. But as I neared the edge of the street, I saw it. A door. It was just standing there, glowing faintly, like it had been waiting for me. It was old and weathered, covered in cracks, but it shone in the distance, a beacon in the dark. I didn't know what would be on the other side, but I didn't care anymore. It had to be better than this. Without another thought, I rushed toward it, throwing open the door and stepping through. I stumbled through, and as the door slammed shut behind me, I was hit by a rush of fresh air. The world around me was different, brighter, clearer, real. The fog was gone. The streets were normal again. I looked around, taking in the familiar sights of the city. Cars drove by. People walked along the sidewalks, and the world seemed alive again. I blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden shift in reality. Had I really escaped? Was this the world I had once known, or was this another trap, another layer of nightmare? But everything felt so real. The sun was shining, the air warm. I could hear birds in the distance, feel the ground solid beneath my feet. It was like waking up from a long, horrible dream. I took a few cautious steps forward, unsure of what to do next. The terror I had felt moments ago still clung to me like a shadow, but the world around me felt like it was finally breathing again. I felt free for a moment. I let myself breathe. I let myself believe that I had finally escaped. But just as quickly, the feeling of peace was shattered. I turned a corner, and standing there in front of me, as if it had always been waiting, was the mirror. Same one from before. The one that had shown me that twisted version of myself. The same one that had tried to drag me into the darkness. I froze. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see what it would show me this time. But something compelled me. A pull. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. The reflection stared back at me. But this time, it wasn't distorted. It wasn't grotesque. It was me. But it wasn't the girl I used to be. It was the girl who had survived. The girl who had escaped. And looking at her, I realized something. I wasn't broken. I wasn't marked. I had made it. The reflection smiled. And for the first time, it was a smile that wasn't filled with fear. It was a smile of victory. And I knew with every ounce of strength in my soul that I would never let the darkness take me again. I turned away from the mirror, feeling a surge of hope flood through me. The city stretched out in front of me, vibrant and full of life. The shadows no longer haunted me. The fog had lifted, and the path ahead was clear. I wasn't running anymore. I had survived, and I was stronger than I'd ever been before. The city was still alive, and I had too much to live for now. I wasn't going to let anything tear me down. Not anymore. I walked forward, head held high. There were still questions, still darkness to face. But I knew now that I had the power to face it, and when that darkness tried to find me again, I would be ready. As I walked, I couldn't help but think about everything that had led me here. The fear, the shadows, the terror. It was a part of me now, a scar I would carry forever. But it wasn't the scar of defeat. It was the scar of survival. And no matter what came next, I knew one thing for certain. I would never let it control me again. There's always a way out of darkness. Always. A way to fight back. The key is to never give up. You are stronger than the fear. Stronger than the darkness. You just have to believe.